Alright, hi everyone. The title of my paper or conference paper is Ethics and Gaming, the Unlikely Couple. Hannah Arendt had coined the term the banality of evil to describe the actions of Otto Adolf Eichmann, who was in charge of logistics and mass deportation of the Jews to various extermination camps in Europe. For Arendt, Eichmann was neither insane nor particularly evil, or driven by hatred for the Jews, yet he was able to send 5.5 to 6 million Jews to gas chambers. These actions of Eichmann, which is intimately coupled to the clinical fashion in which so many were put to death, is, in Arendt's opinion, a lack or failure of judgment and thinking. I believe critical judgment and thinking is essential to the understanding of ethics and morality, and as such, it must be practiced in order for the subject to become proficient and less prone to mistakes. A less costly way to practice such decision is through the element of role-playing and total immersion of live-action role-playing games, or LARP. My proposal is not that role-playing games can in any way substitute for the practice of logic or critical thinking, but it can act as a facilitator in putting theoretical knowledge in some form of practice. If judgment and thinking are seminal in one's formation of ethics, one would need clear definition of thinking and judgment. Arendt defines thinking as distinct from knowing. Her definition follows the trajectory laid down by Immanuel Kant, who sees knowing or understanding Verstand as different to thinking and reasoning, Vernunft. Understanding is aimed at discovering knowable truth, while reasoning takes one step further, posing questions that cannot be answered by knowledge. For Arendt, thinking is a repetitive process that focuses on a particular problem, bringing new knowledge to it time and time again. In this process, one is able to produce meaning that allows one's interaction with one's milieu. If one is able to reason and think in such a manner, this practice of rigorous thinking can become a way of life that undergirds a good and ethical life. But this application of such a way of thought and contemplation requires practice to gain any proficiency. It must be ingrained within the subject by repetition before it can become a way of life. My objective is to show how a specific type of LARP gaming can offer one the contextual situation needed to practice such skills. The two games under examination are Dystopia Rising from the US and Kappa from Norway. Dystopia Rising is a US live-action role-playing game set in a world 4 generations after a zombie apocalypse. It is uncertain how this undead infection spreads. The only certainty is the deployment of the nuclear option that brought the whole world and the entire human race to its knees. The devastation wrought by the nuclear option was immense, not only in terms of human lives, but also in terms of human progress. The bombs that we ourselves triggered wreaked havoc on our infrastructure that the grids that once supported our transportation, energy, and information needs have been eradicated. This meant that technological advancement we made since 1980s, stored in digital space, has been completely lost. The human population, vastly decimated by disease, the nuclear apocalypse, and now the lack of resources to sustain modern lives, have been reduced to small, isolated communities that hunt and scavenge. This is the world that the players are cast into, and the seminal questions are: how do we sustain our basic needs for water, food, and shelter? How do we prevent infection from the outside and disease from within? And perhaps most importantly, how do we maintain order within community? What laws and order should we enforce? And what ethical framework should guide our moral decisions? Basically, this is an extended examination of what it means to be human. The key factor that can facilitate a more acute understanding of ethic and moral issues is that in one's everyday existence, we're not faced with such stressful decisions. Most of us are not called upon to make decisions that are so glaringly painful. What I mean is that most of our communal, interpersonal relations are covered by the veneer of civility and cushioned by modern civilization. One's interpersonal relationships can be, and often often an imminent existential threat. Take the scenario where one or more members of a community has fallen sick with a virus. With the aid of modern medicine, it can be cured by a course of antibiotics. But in a world where it's very difficult to come by, what can a community do? How do one isolate the ill, and who would care for them when another group is searching for antibiotics? Another scenario would be criminality. How do one deal with issues such as theft, violence, or even rape and murder? The problems one faces in this game is a simplified version of Michel Foucault's analysis of biopower, in which he discusses in lectures given at the Collège de France in 1978. Foucault sees a mechanism of power in three areas: the legal system, disciplinary mechanism, and the security apparatus. He utilizes the examination of instances, criminality, disease, as case studies for this argument about how power functions within society. And the game, such as Dystopia, allows one to travel back and immerse oneself in situations where ideas about biopolitics are not taught but lived. If such an apocalyptic world seems far too removed from society, the Norwegian game Kapo may be more suitable. Kapo is a hyper-realistic result of the so-called politics of fear, used to subjugate the population and accumulate ever-increasing political power for the state. Yesterday the fear was of communism. Today it's about terrorism. Kapo takes place within prison camps that are used to hold dissenters from within the population. It is a world where one experiences the dehumanizing effect of incarceration and deliberate state alienation and domination. Kapo LARP construct around two central elements. First, the personal relationship of the player in terms of interaction or confrontation between new and old prisoners. The second aspect is the relation between state and prisoner. In this case, the subject feels a means of control and domination through interrogation techniques, even things such as innocent as light and noise. The prison is structured and controlled by skewed social norms that reinforces the law of the jungle, so that for self-preservation you or the safety of loved ones are forced to adopt this mentality of eaten or be eaten. In line with the words of Martin Niemöller, if we don't speak out when faced with injustice, just because it's happening to someone else, one day the same will happen to us. The game is once again utilizing the seminal ideas of Foucauldian theory of control and discipline. The key ideas here are how the apparatus of security are constructed and function.
And stop. Thank you very much.